You guys ever run, did you ever, were you ever in Herm's office? Like with the trophy heads in there? No. Who was that? What was that? Was that his partner that had those heads? No, I remember. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, he had like gazelles. He had
Good morning.
Okay. Thanks for coming.
Can you hear us okay, Mr. Ryan?
All right, we are good. Thank you, Jenna.
Use it.
You good?
All right. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for attending. Full house. We don't normally have this, so I want to say thank you to everybody for coming out today. It's nice to see so many people wanting to get involved in IDA business and what we do here and have a voice when it comes to the IDA. So thank you very much for coming today. I will call to order the Shenango County IDA Board of Directors regular meeting, February 21st, 2024 at 8 a.m. And we'll go ahead and roll call ourselves in.
Corey here.
Ryan here.
Woodford here.
Burton here. Reading of the IDA mission statement, it is the mission of Shenango County Industrial Development Agency to advance the health, prosperity, and welfare of the county's citizens by helping to retain, create, and attract business through appropriate investments and incentives. Need a motion to approve the minutes of January 17, 2024 regular meeting.
So move.
Need a second?
Second.
Any discussion, corrections, or omissions? Hearing none, we'll vote.
Corey, aye.
Ryan, I.
Woodford, aye.
Bert and I. Financial report, Kathy Jo.
Okay, the statement of financial position for the Interfi account is up to $1,009,500. So since the end of November, it's increased $9,500. The accounts receivable financing leases will be adjusted when the audit starts in March. And so for net activity for January is $40,000. The next page, age receivables, all the annual pilot fees have been billed. The only one that has paid so far is Tiffany Energy, which I think they auto pay because that came through before I even sent the invoice. So, age payables, everything is still within 30 days. And then statement of activities, like I said, the interest income is a little over what I did budget. And net profit for the month is $40,000.
Great.
Oh, and everything Baglery Utilities, they did change the NYSEG to them. So the bill on here is the last bill we'll be paying to
Okay,
NYSEG.
so from now on, that'll be going to them.
Yep, so it'll be very little reimbursement. So it'll be like the village water and
They
sewer,
also
and that's
changed
it.
fuel company.
Yes, they did.
Right.
Yep.
And they came in last week, Jenna, right, and applied, they want to be considered for Shenango County revolving loan fund. Continued expansion at that Baglery. They have some work to do, I think, to give us some information about how they plan to get there. Jen's got to track down some things that Shane wants from them, but they continue to be successful, good success story for the idea.
And they're planning to stay in the building they're in now?
I believe so. They'd like to just expand and get more equipment, is what they're really looking at.
They're negotiating currently with both Price Chopper and Hannaford and need more controlled storage so that they can produce and store it until the shipments go out. That's what they're looking for, is a controlled room where they can control the temperature so that the bagels don't end up going bad.
Just a great incubator story. You know, somebody that needed help for expansion, couldn't do it on their own. And we were able to step in and help. So great job to this board for getting that going and, you know, creating a success story.
And for whatever it's worth, because everything's under one umbrella of Commerce Shenango, I was in Bainbridge yesterday. They're not part of the Bainbridge Chamber, but having conversations with them and having a couple other members over there. Had two more members call yesterday, two new members call, J.R. Bogar and Armando Petroselli signed up their businesses to say, hey, you're not just focusing on Norwich and that area. It's good to see you coming to our meetings and stuff. So I know it's not directly related to the IDA, but greater strength of the organization by more members participating because they have access to the things we do, right? So there is tangential benefit for the community.
Need a motion to accept the financials?
So moved.
Need a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote.
Corey, aye.
Ryan, I.
Woodford, aye.
Bert and I. Bills and invoices, there's really nothing, out of the ordinary there. The final bill on the NICEAG for everything Bagley, Village of Bainbridge Water and Sewer, and then our contract costs. Need a motion to approve the bills and invoices?
So moved.
Need a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote.
Corey, aye.
Ryan, I.
Woodford, aye.
Bert and I. Great. We're going to go, because Martha's on time constraints, and we'd like to potentially vote on the UTEP policy changes at the end of this, during this meeting. And we need Martha for a quorum. We're going to skip down to the UTEP policy review. This came about in discussions with Steve Harris, other players, our attorneys, some comments made by some people that were applying for pilots, and then of course this board reviewing the UTEP and feeling that our old UTEP kind of handcuffed us a little bit. We felt when it came to charges and what the cost is, especially when it came to megawattage of solar. We want to give more leeway to increase costs over time. For those of you that aren't familiar, when we did our first one, I think our megawatt cost, we charged like $2,000.
4,500.
How much
4,500 was the first one.
was the first one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Dropped down.
And then it went to 2, and then, so it was all over the board, because it was new. Nobody in New York State really knew a lot about it. We were calling around, just trying to learn what we could learn. And as we gained more knowledge, we got more set in what we were charging per megawatt. And now it's come to our attention that even that dollar amount is not necessarily sufficient, depending upon size or scope of the solar project. So we went back to our attorneys and said, hey, got a couple of things we want to add into the UTEP or make more, give us more leeway when it comes to charging per megawatt. And they redlined the UTEP. New York State law requires that when we make any changes to a UTEP, that we send it out to all townships, municipalities, counties, and school districts for review. And that's what it is. It's a review so that you have an idea of how we're moving forward, what we're looking to do. We're more than happy to accept your feedback, but I will tell you that everything in here it's not our verbiage, it's attorney verbiage. So with that being said, we need to quickly review the UTEP policy, which we've all seen, the red line items. Is there anything for discussion in there that gives anybody agita or you'd like to see changed?
So like Brian said, the two significant changes are the price per megawatt and also the deviation policy was cleaned up because that's where we're able to follow the deviations if need be. So I can show both of those.
Please, if
Okay,
you
yeah.
pull those up.
Yep. A lot of this was just cleaning up the language, making sure that it was all uniform and following the same format as before. Bear with me. So this is the deviation policy. All of the blue is stuff that was added or corrected. The red is stuff that was removed and taken out.
So what this verbiage really does in a nutshell, it allows us to deviate from the UTEP policy on things like term, the way the cost is structured in specific instances that would require going outside our normal set standards for the UTEP. It's a case-by-case basis. If you have a project that you highly believe in and will fit our mission statement, this gives us the leeway to potentially work with that industry to provide a longer-term benefit, to stretch out, the savings a little longer if necessary, if that's what it requires for them to come and do business in Shenango County, essentially.
Yeah, if Micron wanted to put a plant here, and you wanted to be able to deviate slightly to add 5,000 jobs in Shenango County, you want to have that flexibility. That's all it is. And Steve, this is something you would approve of, correct? And we would, this.
Oh, yeah, no, yeah.
This flexibility. I want to make sure everybody knows that. All this stuff, we go to Steve and say, does this all make sense to you within, that, because that's how we got goofed up with the megawatt charges to begin with, we got out of line. We've gotten that back in line, so these UTEP policies follow the guidance of the county.
And this is, again, still the deviation policy that they edited and changed. I'm just trying to find the price per megawatt. Right there.
We had it stated in there. It was almost hard and fast in the wording that we would charge $4,000 per megawatt. Not necessarily the right number for some of these projects. So we wanted to have that leeway. We're hearing things that some of these projects are being charged $8,000 a megawatt, which is way up from where it was 5 years ago, or 4 years ago even. So you can only guess it's going to continue to climb. So we wanted to be able to, we didn't want to have to rewrite the UTEP policy every time we found out that target's moving. So we went with more generic wording that allowed us to adjust with that without having to rewrite the UTEP policy every time.
It gives us a minimum of the 4,000, but we can adjust at any time. So those are the two changes that were significantly drastic. The other changes were just verbiage that was more uniform for the entire policy itself.
So normally we don't open this up to public comment, but I know there's some interested parties that are here today just to hear about and talk about the UTEP policy. So in the interest of somebody who may want to talk, is there anybody that would like to say anything about the UTEP policy at this point? Raise your hand. Anybody?
Any questions about it?
Questions? You look like you got one. Don't be afraid to ask.
I think we're here for the Village of the school district, Tim Ryan for Cambridge. And I think our questions more pertain to the wind farm project. I don't know if that's going to be up for discussion or not.
We weren't necessarily talking about a specific project.
Okay.
Today we should ride, they were originally on.
He is.
So we need to have a discussion about that.
Chris Stanton from Highbridge is on us on Teams. So we'll be having that
That's on the
conversation later in the
agenda.
We're going to
agenda.
talk about hybrid in a
We're
little
coming
bit.
right after this.
Okay.
We're coming right after this.
You asked, you shall receive. We're very
Appreciate it.
So yes, hybrid will be presented.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
Just for a small clarification, so what is gonna happen in the adjusted document is that there won't be a specific amount.
It says minimum now of 4,000.
Okay,
Yeah.
sorry. Okay,
Yeah, so that gives a baseline, right? Because I remember some projects coming to us with like 1,500 was their first offer per megawatt. And we got the one in green, we got the public hearing, they're asking for 1,500, and after public hearing, we're like, absolutely not, you know? And we knew going in that wasn't going to be feasible. But we did go back and change that one. It didn't go up to where it should be, but it now gives us that leeway and it gives them a baseline. So they're not coming to us asking for 1,500, right? That's a waste of their time. It's a waste of our time. So, okay. Anything else on this? Tim?
I don't know why. Hold on.
Oh, hold on. You got it on headphones.
Try it now, Tim.
I was late to the table, so I may have missed introductions, but I wanted to introduce myself to the group. Tim Ryan, Superintendent of Schools for Bainbridge Guilford. And with me today is Susan Johns, one of our school attorneys from Ferrara Fiorenza out of Syracuse. And we are here for the High Bridge discussion.
Okay.
Yeah, we didn't do those introductions yet, Tim. We were just getting through some of the business
Got it,
practices we needed to do. Well, I promise we'll introduce you in just a minute I swear to you.
Thank you.
And Chris Stanton is now on as well via Teams.
Okay. All right. So at this point, I would entertain a motion to accept the changes to the UTEP, and then have the attorney write up the final document.
Corey, make that motion to change the UTEP as discussed.
Great. Need a second?
Second?
Got a second? Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote.
Corey, aye.
Marian, aye.
Woodford, aye.
Bert and I. Great. Okay, that's everything we had to vote on today, Martha. Thank you so much for rearranging your schedule so that we could have a forum today. Much appreciated. Do we want to
Join
go?
us, please. Yeah, I think go to Hybrid Solar. I think, that would make the most sense. Please join us at the table and we will do those introductions real quick so we can move forward. And then those people that are here for that we'll move into the railroad discussion afterwards. We'll get our guests on the topic first. Sit there, Rob, please.
Chris, can you hear us okay?
Quickly then, if we could, we'll go around and introduce ourselves here at the table, Tim, those that are involved with the IDA quickly. But if you guys on the remote would like to go first, starting with you, and then we'll go clockwise, that would be great.
Me again?
Yes, please.
Second time's a charm or something. Tim Ryan, Superintendent for Bainbridge Guilford, and I appreciate you letting us come today. This has been, multiple years discussion, and I think my attorney and I and maybe Dort and Cameron are just looking for a refresher as to where we are with some updates and when this will hit the districts and stuff like that. So thank you for having us.
Okay.
Good morning. I'm Susan Johns from the Ferrara firm on behalf of Bainbridge Guilford.
Hey, everybody. Some familiar faces in there, and I imagine I'm a new face to some. So Chris Stanton, I'm Senior Director of Development for Northwind Power, the owner of the High Bridge Wind Project. And in addition to that role, where I'm responsible for development of our projects across New York State, I'm actually specifically the development lead on this project, High Bridge Wind. I've been working on it since about 2018 when it was owned by Calpine, the previous owner.
Good. So we should have it. I'm Sal Testani. I have responsibility for Commerce Chenegro and administer the work of the IDA.
R.C. Woodford, member of the IDA.
Brian Burton, IDA Chair.
Cameron Daniels, also the Ferrara firm, here on behalf of Gilbertsville Mount Upton School District.
Dorothy Ionello, business official at Gilbertsville Mount Upton.
Mike Corey, Town Supervisor in Smyrna and IDA member.
Martha Ryan, IDA member.
Jenna Ostrander, Commerce Shenango.
Yeah, good to go. Thank you, Jen. Those are the people that you would, now, I don't know where we want to start this conversation, Tim, but there were a variety of questions around the payment terms, right? And the changes that we had made to, any changes that would be made to the tax rates you guys are receiving. Do you want to start with your questions? What questions does the district have, specifically each district? And we'll try to be able to answer them.
Cameron and Dort, I don't know if you want to go and we'll jump on, or we probably have similar questions.
Sure. I mean, I think there was, so I'm looking at a pilot. Schedule A has a, the allocations and percentages. And we, mostly there's curiosity as to where those numbers come from. I'm seeing 25% for each school district. So I think that was one of the questions. Dort, I know you had some others.
I understand that the project has not even started, is that so? Okay, and, we really wanted to know, like, because the first payment was scheduled for 23-24. And, we have to include this in our tax cap calculation, and obviously it's not gonna happen in 23-24 because the parcels have not come off the tax roll.
Yeah, parcel. I'm Steve Harris, Director of Real Property.
Please, Steve,
Tax
come up
and
and join us.
Business.
I apologize. Go ahead. I should have done that.
The parcels won't, the land parcels won't come off the roll. What you do is you added subdivision parcels to the same number with a -1. And the project isn't started yet at all. And something I was gonna talk to the idea about anyways, in all the projects, is the payment schedule has to be put in as a tentative schedule, because none of these projects, as far as solar or wind, get built on time. They're coming here to get their financials secured, so they're getting the approval. When it actually starts, though, could be down the road. I had, let's say, a 487 project, solar project, 3 years before it was built. Our agreements that we do under 487, solar wind exemption, we reworded it that everything is a tentative plan until first January after the first taxable status date when the project is built and it's assessed. Because what will happen is if they pay this today and doesn't go for 3 years down the road, you got 3 years at the other end where there's a project there that nothing's gonna get paid on. I've seen that happen. The wind farm in Madison that was built had a firm date of starting January. It started the year before it was assessed. So the last year of the project, there was no money paid at all. I mean, that last year of the contract. Same thing happened in the Fender wind farm. Except there's a few other nuances, but there really needs to be some verbiage put in that it's a tentative schedule and it'll be based on when the property is assessed. It can't start before
Makes
there's
sense.
something there to value.
Right.
And
Makes
even
sense.
the application to the town for the exemption should be done for the March 1st of when it's built. I have no idea what the plans are for this project as far as when it's actually gonna be shoveled, in the ground and construction starting. That's where I would look at
So
it.
at what point, like, because there's 60 properties affected by this.
Yep.
So at some point, when it did start, they would come off the tax roll, correct?
The parcels themselves won't, because they're privately owned.
Okay.
They're owned by individuals. Typically with a solar wind farm, the land is the parcel number that it is, and then the structure on top of it, Suffolk stock is the Suffolk parcel. Have a number -1. That's the way all the wind farms are in Madison County.
Okay.
Because they don't own the land. You can't take off a private individual's property from the assessment roll.
Okay.
They're not entitled to that. They're not seeking the pilot. What's on top of it is seeking the
Okay.
pilot.
Okay.
So those are still assessed. What they are.
So saying that correctly then, the taxes aren't gonna go down. The revenue's not going to go down because the properties aren't coming off, even when the pilot starts. Revenues are gonna go up. The question is, they're not gonna go up until that project actually starts. So you're saying we need some more flexibility on application statements?
Well,
Or
on the-
that need to be changed? Tell me.
And the agreement itself, there
On the
just needs to be
agreements.
wording that it'll take place after the first taxable status date
Mhm.
that it's there.
Okay, we'll get that changed.
Yeah, I've got some more formal wording in my office with
Yeah, we'll do that. This was written in 2018, right? So is this agreement 20, yeah, so
But-
that's fine. All right. Get us the right stuff and we'll get it cleaned up.
Right.
Fast as we can.
So
But that's
The
the
agreement
history.
does, the agreement does state that it assumes commercial operation prior to March 1, 2024.
There's
So there is
nothing,
flexibility, but that flexibility seems to be limited.
right, it just needs to be open-ended, it needs to be just verbiage that the payment plan, the payment schedule will start after the first taxable status date when the project is assessed, when there's something there for the assessor to value.
Makes sense.
No, I understand that. I don't think the current agreement reflects that exactly.
It doesn't reflect that, no, and it's something that I've seen with most solar wind pilot agreements so far. And they typically, the developers they typically don't build, as soon as they get this agreement, they typically don't start that day, not from my experience I've seen.
I will say early on, they were starting much quicker because they were
Right.
trying to get in under the window
Yep.
of the New York State
Yep.
grants and tax incentives.
Mhm.
So they were finding any way to break ground as quickly as possible. They're not doing that now.
Right.
So timeframe, it seems to be a big question here, Chris. Can you shed any light on that for the folks in the room?
Absolutely, yeah, and I think you said it exactly right. So when we came to you guys with the application and then entered into the agreement several years ago, the world looked pretty different. So we had a financial model and a business case for moving forward under a contract that was in place with New York State to sell energy and renewable energy credits and energy capacity from the project. That time frame at that time had us starting construction in the spring of 2022 with a goal of reaching commercial operations in 2024. I think I shared this with you last time I was in, maybe it was April of last year. We were this close to hitting go on that plan. What happened is we faced a really significant increase in the cost of our wind turbines from our manufacturer, and interest rates went way up in the spring of 2022. And so we were at the sort of right at the starting line. We called it off and said we were not able to move forward with the project. The economics would not support an investment decision at that time. What happened kind of in the intervening period is we got interest from another large company called Invenergy to acquire the project from us. So unfortunately, we kind of wasted a lot of 2022 and part of 2023 trying to enter into a business deal with Invenergy to sell this project. Invenergy is a large owner and operator of wind farms and solar farms across the state of New York. And it seemed at the moment, at that time, at that snapshot in time, call it summer 2022, that they had a plan to get the project going in a way that we could not. That acquisition, that deal was signed in the spring of 2023. However, or it was even winter. However, New York State took its time in approving the deal over the course of the summer. And at the end of summer, early fall, for whatever reason, we received word from Invenergy that they were not interested in acquiring the project from us. So we received that news in fall of 2023. At the time, there was a really interesting proceeding going on in front of the Public Service Commission. Highbridge Wind, along with something like 60 other projects, was petitioning the state for a one-time increase in the price under the contract to increase the price of electricity, renewable energy credits, and energy capacity sold from the facility. That process went through a commission review over the course of summer 2023. And right around the time, I don't think it was coincidence, right around the time that the commission decided that they were denied that petition and said there would be no relief for inflation, Invenergy, the interested party, backed away and said they didn't want to acquire the project. I can't speak for the company, but I imagine those two events were connected. So what that means for the state of New York is that as a result of the denial of that petition, Highbridge Wind, and there's something like 60 other projects are in the same boat. These are projects that are fully permitted and ready to move forward, but under the current economics, basically what happened to the world between, call it 2021 and 2023, are unable to move forward. So in response, the state of New York launched a expedited solicitation to recontract projects that had previously been contracted. So projects just like Highbridge Wind. And that solicitation closed at the end of January of this year. So January 31st, 2024, we submitted our new bid for High Bridge Wind, along with, I think the bid pool shrunk. I think it was something like 56 to 58 projects. And presumably New York will award certainly more than one contract. I imagine there'll be something between 20 and 40 contracts, but that's just a guess on my part. So we have a very good odds of securing a new contract from the state. Unfortunately, that process does take time. We're unlikely to hear back from the state until, call it May or June of this year. However, the solicitation, obviously every municipality in New York is familiar with how you run an RFP. This one's no different. You score the bidders most prominently on price. Who has the lowest price is likely to win. But being New York State, they also include a bunch of different criteria trying to meet the state's political and social goals. Among them are the likelihood of success of the project and the status of how well permitted it is. Also important consideration is, what economic benefits the project will bring to the state of New York. So we're proud to say that High Bridge Wind scores extremely well versus the competition on those non-price factors. This project has, everything it needs from Shenango County, from the town of Guilford, and from the state of New York to actually start tree clearing tomorrow. It has the authorizations it needs if we were able to make a business case to our management to move forward. So that part is really strong. And then in addition, happy to say that the economic benefits, as costs have increased with inflation, the silver lining of that is that the level of economic benefits to be delivered to the state of New York have increased substantially. So on this project, we do plan to use the same contractor we used at Bluestone. That would be the Wesson Group out of Johnstown, New York. At Bluestone, the Wesson Group was very successful at delivering quite a few economic benefits to local suppliers. I'd say we spent in total millions, easily probably close to 10 million in aggregate asphalt and road repair services. And in addition, we rented millions of dollars worth of equipment out of the Binghamton area. And finally, on the labor piece, we were able to supply the project with a majority of labor sourced from the Southern Tier labor area, which prominently includes Broome County, but also includes Shenango County and surrounding counties. So I think we were something like 50 to 65, 70% in the final labor quotient, still working on those numbers. So the economic benefits, I think, speak for themselves, and we would look to bring that same methodology to Shenango County for this project. So that piece is good. So timeline, we are in the solicitation. Bid responses or decision from NYSERDA, which is the state agency for renewable energy, is expected by May or June. If we get a favorable determination, which we hope we will, we would then move pretty quickly to enter into supply contracts to supply the facility with wind turbines, with construction services, with high voltage gear and other long lead items that, still, even despite the change in the economy, there's things out there that take 12 to 24 months in terms of lead time about specialty equipment that's manufactured across the world, often in the United States. So we would look to place those orders in the fall of 2024, and then we would look to begin earthwork on site in the spring of 2025. The goal under that schedule would be to have the facility in operation by the end of 2026. So your first tax, to answer the question from the schools, under that schedule, your first, tax year would be calendar year 2027.
Chris, you gave a good look, and I think Cameron, you mentioned this at the beginning. Do we have time to revisit how the schools, what percentage we are going to materialize out of this agreement and how that was determined? Because I can't remember when we sat in the Guilford Town Hall 3 years ago, whenever that was. So a lot of time has passed. I'd like to be able to deliver a refresher to a Board of Education that has several new members. Do we have time to kind of go over that?
From my standpoint, absolutely. I don't know how the IDA board feels.
Yeah, I don't see any reason we can't. Again, just like you, Tim, it's been a while. Not sure how we arrived at those numbers. I'm sure it was a recommendation from an attorney. Might have been part of the UTEP policy. Is there 2 or 3 school districts involved in this one? Just
There are 2.
Okay.
And if Dort, jump in, I believe Gilbertsville Mount Upton has 15 turbines going in their district, and Bainbridge Guilford has 10 going in our district,
Yeah.
25 total.
Okay, so yeah, we're more than happy to reach out to our attorney, see if they can remember why the percentages were what they were, how that they arrived at that. And then we'll get you an answer on that, okay?
I appreciate that, and from what Chris says, it sounds like a lot has changed. So I guess my question is going to be, I believe, Dort, jump in, schools were told we were going to get about $99,000 a year once this hits. And that, so that was 25%, and the county was, I can't remember, Dort, jump at 50%, schools are 25 and 25, something like that. So I guess I'm curious to see if that is still where we're going to land, or has that changed? Because Chris is talking a lot about economic benefit and cost of this and cost of that. So that would be something that we would need to kind of figure out.
Yeah, we'll meet with our attorney.
Yeah, 'cause we wouldn't have a public, that's a contract, right? Yeah.
Right, it's already been approved, it's a contract. I think if you made any changes that were agreed upon, it'd have to go back to public, what's the word?
Public hearing.
Public comment, yeah, public, hearing, geez, sorry. So we would almost have to start from scratch with that process again, but obviously we got 2 years. So.
Sure.
So we could, my point, Tim, on that was, it's not something that, without going through a lengthy process of saying, hey, and I don't know how much we can comment about contracts in public, so on and so forth. So we got to go to our attorneys, like Brian said, figure out if we can understand what the basis was, have the IDA have a conversation around, I don't know, Steve, should we have something as part of our UTEP that discusses these things for different projects? I don't know. We'll have a conversation, and like I just heard, we've got 3 years before things are going to change from a taxation standpoint. So we'll try to get it right and figure it out from here.
I appreciate that.
I just don't know what right is right now.
Yeah, basically with the contracts, if there's nothing specified in it, it goes by percentage of tax rate, which isn't
right.
Which isn't the most equitable way to distribute that payment. School district always has the highest tax rate. Towns always have the lowest. I'm thinking ones here in the town of Norwich where their tax rate, because the sales tax is like $1, $1 in the town, not the city. So when you divide a contract on a tax rate, I can think the solar project Evans, $4,500 a megawatt. I think the town gets $1,000 out of that total payment, which isn't a lot. And the towns and the counties are actually more impacted than the school. You're not getting more students. You're not having to fix roads. There's other things involved with it.
That's why we would have to open this up again to a broad conversation, Tim, and have those debates. If we're going to open this contract again, we'll have those conversations again, just like we went from scratch, right? But I wanted you to hear the other side of that, so I'm glad Steve was here. There's some debate as to whether or not, who should get the larger share of that, who does bear the larger burden. If that project has 2 people that put it together and there's no real impact on the schools, what should their percentage be equitably? Right? They're not getting any less taxes because they're still getting the land tax. They're going to get more taxes as a result of this. And the county and the towns, there's the debate. I'm just telling you, that's what the conversation would be in opening that up, right? So that's why we want to make sure we do it all appropriately with our attorney's advice.
I can remember there was some conversation that like the fire departments are gonna have to buy special equipment
Right.
because you can't just roll up with a fire truck and put out a battery fire at one of these things. So I think all those things that have been mentioned were probably taken into consideration, but that's an assumption. And
Right,
I don't like this, so let's get an
We'll
answer.
get some clarity.
Right now, there is an agreement, correct?
That's correct.
Yes, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, because this was gonna break ground a long time ago.
right, I understand that. We were involved, but we were not involved when the final numbers were arrived, hence the question as to how the numbers were determined. And is it your intention to revisit and revise this agreement?
You broke up, Susan, during a good portion of that.
Oh, I'm
question.
sorry. Is
Sorry.
it your intention to revisit and revise this agreement?
We don't know that at this point.
Not even sure
You
we
would ask
can.
that-
We're-
Yeah, I don't think we can, but again, assumption, no good, attorney, good.
So
So our request then is that the school districts be fully involved in any revision to the agreement and that we get some understanding as to how these numbers were arrived at because they are not the same numbers that we were originally dealing with.
By law now, we're required to be more transparent with school districts, townships. All this information before it's approved has to go out to them. We had a project over in Bainbridge. We met with the town, the village, the school district was invited. That's not something we didn't do before. We always invited school districts from the get-go because obviously budgeting for them is a difficult task to start with. So the more information they had, the better off they were putting a budget together. Matter of fact, part of, we invited the school districts in, they would give us recommendations, and we did make some changes early on to this. They wanted to get away from tiered pilots. They wanted like 5-year jumps so that they could budget better. We did a couple pilots early on where we structured them that way to benefit the school district's budgeting process. So we're not opposed to anything, really. We want all this stuff, like you heard our mission in the beginning, it's got to benefit, right? And we're not going to do anything that's not going to benefit the communities as a whole. It's going to make life hopefully better in the end for Shenango County economically, our school districts, but we are by law now required to do that stuff. So we don't have an option to keep the school districts in the dark on it, even if we wanted to, but I can tell you we never did that.
I have Kevin Cole, is that still the legal counsel for IDA or?
No.
No.
He is not. It's still with the same office. It's still with BSK, but
Okay.
it's through a different, it's Tom Clifford and Matt Wells.
Okay. But still bond channel?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
May I make one comment there?
Mhm.
So I'm not represented by council today, so I can only kind of speak generically, but I will say, just to echo the comments, in general, these large utility scale wind and solar projects, you can see it in pilot and host community agreements across the state. The towns get a higher percentage of the revenue than they normally would under the tax rate structure for exactly the reasons mentioned. It's the town that will directly receive complaints from citizens. It'll be the town supervisor and staff that will go out and investigate, any type of complaints from, about our facility. It's the town that will investigate. We are responsible for fixing and paying for fixing of roads, but the town does. Unfortunately, bear a burden of just looking to see if there's areas that need to be fixed. So town staff incur that cost. It falls pretty heavily on the town, and the amount of people we bring to town is short-lived. It's really during the construction phase where we'll have several hundred people, spending their money, but generally they will go home in the evenings. And so, in terms of long-term staff, we're looking at the Bluestone facility. We're going to settle in a little under 10. Highbridge would be either operated out of Broome or operated with a small facility at Guilford. So we're we were very cautious in our application, but we're still going to have several dedicated permanent employees at Highbridge, but it's not going to be anywhere near in terms of addition to the population as the value, the taxable value that's brought to the town and the school district. So that's the rationale. And then the other comment I just want to make is, this is a signed agreement, and so we bid this project into New York State on January 31st with the assumption that this pilot agreement is what is the basis for the economics. And as we've said before, right, this is a huge driver of economics if the dollar per megawatt rate were to change. So I just want to make sure that it's clear to everybody in the room that this is now, we are now locked into the price we offer in New York State. We cannot change that price under any circumstance. The only thing we could do is pull our bid or withdraw our bid from consideration.
Yeah, Chris, just to clarify a little bit, I don't think it would ever be a question of us, going back on our contract and our contracted price with you. I think the change that's being looked at is more about the percentage of payouts to each entity. It's not about the cost. We know, we signed a contract with you, Chris. It would not, the percentage payouts would change, which wouldn't affect your dollar. Your
Okay,
bottom line.
thanks for that comment. I appreciate it.
Yeah, we can. I mean, we got a couple of attorneys here. They would probably tell you the same thing, that we signed a contract, that we can't go and you've got a contracted price with us.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you.
We'll get back to you then on if we can determine with Von Schoeneck and King, the basis for those rates. I'm sure they must have some record of it. Other questions on this topic? Because we still have a couple other guests and things to get through here. Good to go.
We appreciate
Thank you
your
guys for joining
conversation.
us. Thank you for
Thank
coming
you.
in today. I
Thank you.
appreciate it very
Thanks a
much.
lot. Appreciate everybody joining.
Thank you.
One thing I would suggest, just not this, but with especially with the solar pilots, is I've had a lot of communication this year from the solar companies in regards to paying all the special district charges. Something's got to be really highlighted, bold printed, whatever in the contracts that they will be paying fire district charges. I've gone back and, well, it is, but I guess they don't read their agreements. So I've had to go back and point out to them what it is and so forth. So maybe it's bold print that you're gonna pay fire district. Just think of the Tiffany one, the pilot payment is $15,000, the fire district tax is $30,000. But, we're only supposed to pay 15, now we're supposed to pay 15, but you're liable for 100% of fire taxes.
It's in there. You're just saying you want us to bold it.
Bold it,
You want me to talk like
Read
me?
triple the
Yeah,
size.
say it from time, say it again, say it
Something,
louder.
yes.
I got you.
Because every year I have to go back and forth with a few of the companies, like, I built it.
We appreciate your help.
Any special districts, correct?
Any special districts, yes.
Any
Yes.
other
That one has
RFPs?
to have a lighting district with it too, that they contribute to.
Correct.
Dr. Harper, Dr. Holmes, John, join us, please, all. Thank you. These are the gentlemen that are here now to discuss the railroad. So that was past the full rate.
Thank you.
Should we read that, Karen? Leave it alone.
Just in case.
So Dr. Holmes and the IDA board, you guys are here, and I'm sure that everybody's read this, and I appreciate you sending it to me. And just so I know that we have had it in more, I've had it, and I'm sure that others have. I've been fortunate enough to hear you present on the concept. So we're familiar with what it is that you would like to do, which is bank the railroad from Shenango Forks to Utica, for those of you that have not been and that are guests here. Our contract with the railroad is potentially up in 2025. We can extend that, we could end it early, we can't discuss those things, it's a contract, right? So my point is that what would you like from the IDA other than, because we agree, and I'm going to paraphrase, that we need to understand and explore what the plans are for the railroad when that contract expires. We need to figure that out. And we are going to be in the process of trying to figure that out within the county, trying to figure out what to do. The IDA and all of us would love to try to figure that out. So is there something that you're asking of the IDA at this point? I'd like to, I guess that's what I'd like to know, because we understand this concept, and I believe, I'm just giving my personal opinion, but that doesn't matter. I believe it has merit. I believe it has challenges because it crosses 4 counties. I believe there's different ways to do it than the way you're describing. I don't say I don't support it. I just have a difference of opinion in how I would go about activating it. And I believe we need to take some time and have some people study what's best for our county first before we study what's best for the entire path. Because there's 3 other counties engaged, and it's difficult enough to try to figure out what to do in one county. So I'm telling you what I would talk about in this, and we have in this forum. I'd like to know, so I think we should consider what you're proposing as part of the IDA's consideration as to what to do with our portion of the railroad. And that's really the responsibility that we have right now, is our portion of that railroad. There's other counties that would have to get engaged with this, with banking that piece and what they want to do with that. And it's going to be difficult, if not impossible, for us to affect what they want to do, right? So is there that's what, I'm just giving the basis, because I just came from an economic development conference that I was going to talk about. These types of things are in conversation everywhere in upstate New York. So what is the ask? To be involved? I'm sure you will be. To say, we agree that this is the best thing to do? I can't speak for the IDA, but I'll give you my opinion on that. It may be, I don't know yet. So I'm not sure what the ask is right now.
Well, thank you for that introduction. And we are here to convey 4 different asks. So
Okay.
we'll go over those 4 things this morning. And one clarification, when we met here last in July of last year with Nate Fenno and the group, we are talking about rail banking only from Shenango Forks to south of Sangerfield, not to Utica. So
Okay.
that makes a big difference, because that we're not asking for them to stop their active rail corridor, which goes from Utica to Sangerfield. So that's an important clarification here.
Yeah, my point was not, the point was not for me to make how far the railroad would continue. The point was that it touches 4 counties. And so the difficulty is not in that portion that's left. We still have to go talk to people in Madison and Oneida County if we wanted to do this, which is difficult. That's all I was trying to say. So
Our larger goal is to eventually have the 90-mile corridor from Binghamton to Utica connect with the Empire State Trail in Utica. We're here today to focus on 45.5 miles of trail in Shenango County. There are several things that we're really focusing on. And one of them is very specifically to talk about what Nate Fenno described as the legal status of the rail line through Shenango County. He used the term that the IDA has legal title to the right-of-way here in Shenango County, and that the New York Susquehanna and Western Railroad has equitable ownership. I don't know what those mean. They're lawyerly terms, we believe, and we would like some help from one of the asks is some clarification from the IDA on the exact ownership. Our reading of the deed and the lease provides the IDA with total ownership of this land. So as to what the legal title is and equitable ownership is, I don't know.
I'm not a lawyer, but I'll give it to you to paraphrase, Dr. Holm. Right now, we lease the property back. Our agreement with them is an agreement so that we have that land in a lease agreement with the railroad during that 10-year agreement, so we could be the beneficiary. The Shenango County IDA could be the beneficiary of that grant. When this expires, the railroad will own that land again. So they will own that land, not Shenango County. When this agreement expires, that's a misconception that the IDA owns that property. They do not. They lease that property. And then when that lease expires, I'm just giving you very general. I don't want to debate that anymore because I don't know any more than what I just said. In very general terms, not as a lawyer, when the contract expires, the railroad owns that property again. That's what happens.
Well, we would like some legal clarification of that, if that's indeed the case. Our reading does not convey that message, and maybe it's incorrect. And what we also do not know is whether there are other agreements between the IDA and the railroad that may in any way clarify or expand upon this.
All of those, I'm gonna ask out of fiscal responsibility. All of those agreements are public documents, and I don't want to pay our lawyers to dig back through them and understand what they are. I gave you very general terms because I've asked this question. Mr. Fennell answered it. When the terms are up, the railroad is in control of that land, not Shenango County. I can tell you that. So if you guys would like to get your lawyers to dig through that and prove me wrong, I'm okay with that. But I've asked our lawyers that once. Right? Yes, sir.
The reason we're interested is just simply because the last time we met, you asked us to be a little more creative in our thinking other than rail banking and look at other places throughout New York and other parts of the country where this has been done. Rail banking may be one of them, but in all those other scenarios, somebody has to own the corridor. And so who owns the corridor makes a big difference on what process you're going to use. And that's why
Understood. I understand.
that's why we need to understand.
I totally respect you.
Just ask our attorney
I will.
the quick question. Can you give us,
I think you'll find the railroad owns it because originally, the original IDA agreement that was done went through Madison County. The Madison County IDA had a piece of it themselves. They didn't do it.
Yeah.
The railroad owns the railroad there. They pay tax on it and so on from Madison County up. But that was under the same type of agreement that Shenango County is in.
Yeah, they had to lease it back to us in order to qualify.
That's why. So I can clarify that, but I have a couple of times.
A couple of the rail trails that we have looked into, the ownership went from the railroad to the IDA and then on to other bodies. So I think that clarification is extremely important here to figure out who exactly owns it.
We lease the property from the railroad, and we will give that when the lease expires, they will own that. I will clarify it again, but they will own that. That's the
I
agreement.
think that's
So,
the basis of our discussion here.
It allows you an idea how to move
Yeah, it gives
forward
you, yes,
and what entity you truly have to work with.
yes.
Right? Yes, I understand.
Me too.
The second ask is that we would like to ask the IDA to co-sign a letter of intent that the IDA would like to work with the Shenango Greenway Conservancy and the railway to create a rail trail of 45.5 miles to Shenango County. And I did bring a couple of letters that were signed by our chairperson and would invite, I'll leave them here and invite you to consider signing them. But it's very, actually.
You're just looking for a generic letter of support, correct?
It's very
We have legal
simple.
standing.
This letter serves to express our mutual interest in the conversion of the railway line through Shenango County into a multi-use rail trail corridor
I'm
as a
not,
means for economic growth and development. So
I'm not sure, Brian, yet, if you guys want to have that conversation now or not, but my point would be, honestly, I think it's premature to sign that letter because the 2050 vision plan is going on. A countywide recreational plan should be part of that. What we do with the railroad and who leads those efforts, because this would be the intent of saying, we're going to let the Greenway be part of the lead agency.
this is
rather
not
than-
exclusive. It's a letter of intent that we intend to work together.
So I think we bring this to the board.
That's right, that's right. I think that's what we should.
If we could have an example of what somebody's under, I think we all understand what a letter of support entails, that we're just saying that we support the idea of doing something. As long as we keep it generic and specific, generic and specific. How's that for you? As long as we keep it generic, short and sweet, as my attorney always says, less is more. It might be definitely something that we can get on board. These are our copies to keep.
Okay, great.
So we will discuss that as a board at the next meeting.
Okay.
At that time, if the board, it feels, wants to move forward with a generic letter of support to move forward with, whether it's investigating how to use it properly, you guys taking next steps, whatever that may be. We'll vote on it at that point if we come to a.
And I think without that, we essentially have no standing in any of this.
Say that
Our
again, Dr.
interest-
Holmes?
Without a connection to the IDA, I think we have essentially no standing in this. We have no.
The Greenway.
The Greenway.
Sure.
We're not part of the process here. And we'd like to be a major part of this process of moving this forward. We don't know of any other group that is doing this, and we feel this is our place in our community at this point in time.
Well, I think at the meeting with the railroad that we had, one of our major questions, who's gonna take the lead? The great idea, who's gonna run with the ball, right? So, good. All right, so we can review that at the next meeting, okay?
Yeah, we can always change quarterbacks, but we're in a position to really push it forward.
Yeah.
The third request is to have somebody from the IDA go with us to Cooperstown and talk with Nate Fenno on a person-to-person basis about what the railway's intent is to move this project forward. Nate Fenno talked about rail banking 60 miles of corridor from Shenango Forks to near to Sanger Field. And we'd like to make sure that's still the railway's intent. And how can we help them move forward with this project?
And I believe at that time, Nate also offered to help assist in pointing people in the right direction if somebody was willing to take the lead.
We can reach out to Nate Fenno and ask him what his point was.
Yeah, it's probably not a bad time for a follow-up. It's been a few
We'll ask him to
months.
come here.
Okay. And the fourth ask is, we're in the process of trying to contract for a feasibility study for the rail banking portion of this project. And we'd like to know what the IDA would like us to include in that feasibility study. We're not asking for money at this point in time, though I think that's an important consideration.
Well, you're asking a different arm of us for, and that's okay, I get it.
Applied for a grant through the tourism development process.
My point on that would be, I'm not sure yet, Dr. Holmes, because I want to work with Shane and the rest of you. This needs to be part of a bigger vision. It needs to be part of the 2050 vision plan. And we've convened a group to try to figure out what's best for tourism in Shenango County and how to start and where to begin. And there's just different ways to do it. We're going to talk to Congressman Molinaro. We're going to try to engage. I just want us to be very informed before we say, look, I'm going to tell you again, I believe the rail trail has merit, but I believe it would be premature to commit to saying that's the best use for every municipality in Shenango County for that rail trail and for that railroad. And I believe more work needs to be done. And I don't believe the study should be, this is Sal's opinion again, the study should be biased toward what needs to be true to create a rail trail. I'll just finish. It should be what needs to be true to create a recreational plan for the county and what role does the railway play and the river play and our parks play and the quarry play. That's all I'm saying. I'm not arguing.
What we're trying to do is give you data. Before you can decide what's good, you have to have a metric. And the intention of this study is to understand economic benefits that would happen.
I agree with you, John. I think it has to be part of just a bigger study. That's all I'm saying. I don't disagree with you guys at all. I'm simply saying there's lots of people asking us for money to study lots of things. And so I want to be careful about saying, does all this money get used appropriately? Because everybody wants similar things. Economic development through recreational tourism. Everybody in this world that we're talking about. We do. I think there's something there. There's lots there. I just don't know how to activate it yet. And everybody has a passion that their way is definitely the best way. And I understand that passion. I'm one of those people. I just don't know. And I want us to take our time. And we have time. There's no rush. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying.
I'm kind of leaning with Sal. I certainly, I believe this project has a lot of merit and you see it replicated many times throughout upstate New York with with some kind of rail trail conversion. But with that said, right at the moment, we have an opportunity that typically we don't have. And some of us folks that have been around for a while remember, and I'm sure we do, we remember the 2020 Vision Commission and all of their great work back there 30 years ago. And we have an opportunity to replicate that and look at it at a much higher strategic level. How does this fit in with the greater good of Central Shenango County?
So how does our proposal, how dependent is our proposal on being approved or accepted by the 2050 vision plan? Is that if it's not included, is that a no-go?
I don't believe, Dr. Holmes, I don't really see it as an on-off, but I think it's important that at least get some consideration. Is it a yes or no answer? I don't believe so. But I really do believe, as Sal alluded to, we have some opportunities here that we normally wouldn't be afforded. And I think it is, if the timing works, I think it really is something that we should try to incorporate with an existing process that's coming along anyways. To hold it out totally separately, I think would be. Are
you referring to the funding of the research or?
Just the 2050 project in general.
Yeah, the funding for it.
Well, because what I'll tell you right now, they've got part of the money for the vision plan, whatever Shane and his team, Shane's not here, he's off this week. But I've also requested, and the county has graciously given us additional money to stimulate tourism. I'm gonna come back to the county at some point and say, this is a plan and a study I would like us to do to see how could we generate more tourism in this area. And the rail, I think, would be part of that. The river would be part of that. Campgrounds would be part, but I'd like to see a more comprehensive study than saying, let's commit to the rail trail as being the right thing to do first and foremost as part of our recreational plan. It may be, but we may say, no, let's just extend the lease another year. Because right now, Dr. Holmes, one of the beauties that you have to remember is the railroad's paying for all the upkeep on the railroad. So as soon as we say no, I just gave that back to the towns. All that maintenance again, until we have a plan in place. I'm not ready for that. Neither is anybody.
It is important to recognize that this needs to be interposed between now and the time that the railroad chooses to abandon the railroad. Nobody wants abandonment.
Yeah.
And the rail banking process has to be interposed between the current time and that abandonment.
Technically, they have to abandon the railroad, Dr. Holmes, just so you know. They have to abandon the railroad. That's the term they have to use to then bank it. So
let me suggest it's the other way around.
It may be.
If it's abandoned, it cannot be rail banked. It has to be rail banked before it's abandoned. Decommissioned. So the term it's decommissioned is the term we've been using.
Beautiful. Rather than abandoned, I like that one. But in either instance, Dr. Holmes, once it's no longer the responsibility of the railroad, maintaining that then becomes the responsibility of the municipalities, right? And so right now, 2025 is coming. And we don't have an answer for the town of Oxford to take care of those washouts that happen down there, right? So I'm telling you right now, if anybody asks me my opinion, it's my opinion, I'd tap the brakes on all this until we've got a better plan in place for all of it. That's just my opinion. And you are going to be engaged and involved because we're going to be transparent with everything. And I'm going to ask the county, what do they think? Because this affects all those town supervisors up and down that way, not just the IDA. So you're going to be involved. I happen to think you have a cool idea. I'm just not sure how to activate it. That's all.
You know, the one thing about the 2050 plan, it's not binding and it wouldn't exclude things if you're not involved in it, but the timing is pretty good that this thing exists and you could be a part of that. Any input is there for you. And you have a study, in other words, you have a study that's really already in place, it's well-funded, and that is just a starting point. And it wasn't that long ago that we were talking about the viability of a railroad. Can we still use this? So we're beyond that conversation now. So I think things are moving in the right direction.
And the good news is that one of your members is a member of the planning department that's putting the vision together. So Matt is very vested in this, and And
So
we
am I
hear-
correct that you'll ask your attorney to give us some clarification as to the ownership?
Yes,
You'll consider the letter of intent, giving us
Yes.
an agreement to work together toward this common goal. And can we ask somebody from your organization, board, whatever, to go with us to Cooperstown to talk with Nate?
What if we bring Nate here?
I'm sorry?
What if we bring Nate here? Only because I think at this point, it's important the whole board's in on that
Yes, I
conversation.
agree. I agree.
At this point, I know we had the meeting before, there was not a board meeting, it was a regular, just informational meeting, but I think it's time the whole board
That'd be great.
is now involved from the get-go.
And you know what, Brian, I'll ask, I've talked to him several times now because he's been re-engaged at Preferred. I'll ask John Mitchell if he can join us. If we give him enough leeway, he'll come. He's Nathan's boss, so he's on that board as well. So he cares about this community as much as anybody. So I'll get him to come sit with us so we can have a, John will talk not like a lawyer, and he'll be honest with us and upfront. So give us enough time and we'll get him to come.
Yeah, give us a little bit, get that arranged.
That's awesome.
Yep.
Those four things.
Well, one of the things I want to interject here, we put a lot of thought and energy into this so far and have reached out fairly widely. We've made contact with other people that have gone through this entire process. Out in Cattaraugus County, we've made another contact in the Hudson Valley of people who've gone through this rather long, lengthy, convoluted process. And those people are willing to come here and consult with us about our process. So we have taken your advice and gone out and looked at other possibilities. We've had the Northeast Director of Rail to Trail come and visit and look at the project. So we're not at the beginning, we're somewhere in the.
I don't doubt for a minute that you're incredibly intelligent, passionate people that are going to do their work out. But here's my point, and I will ask because I sat through one of these. I encourage you to go back to Hartley, and I can't think of her last name because she was at this conference from Labella. The very person you're asking us a grant for this money, she sat here and talked about the plan for the county, and she said, I think their plan is, I don't know if Matt was on that call, her comment, you were, the cart's in front of the horse, doing this study before having a vision for what the county wants to do and how it plugs in. And that's the consultant from Labella that you were gonna hire. She was on that call. And I saw her in Albany again and confirmed it with her. And she said, yeah, I think we should take a step back because I've asked them they're doing some work for the Commerce Shenango pro bono work right now because of Mike Flanagan to help me figure out what should this look like, this study, right? So we're plugged into what you're saying, but go back to her and ask her what she thinks we should do, right? Please, I encourage you to do that.
Yeah, I don't think we're at a feasibility study point.
I agree with you.
I think, you know.
That's one of the grants that come into the DCC about,
Yeah.
could be, or a tourism grant.
And it could be part of a bigger
That's
study.
right.
And then you're not having to open up your wallets, right?
That's right.
So, yeah, so let's just kind of put the feasibility study on hold at this point. And see what comes of these other things and.
And I'll get all of those.
Be part of a bigger picture.
That's right.
It sounds like the park you're talking to me, that's all we're really looking for. We're trying to help move this.
I know you are. I didn't take this the right way. I mean, and there's just the differences of ways to go about it. And I think the railroad will be a tremendous asset, as will the river. I still know the best way to exploit it.
And this, when the county is looking at this, one of the requests we would have is that this is looked at as part of the infrastructure of our county. It's not just tourism and recreation as a water slide someplace else. It's part of the infrastructure of people moving around our various parts of our county, going to school, going to work, commuting, recreating, et cetera, et cetera. And so it's not just recreation, optional things. It's part of our daily lives. It's part of the communities in which, from Green, Oxford, Norwich, Sherburne, et cetera.
Dr. Holmes,
Part of
just,
the lives of our
just so
community.
you know, Dr. Holmes, because I think you feel like maybe I'm arguing. I believe you might be thinking even too small. It could be the very fabric we center the community around. What if you decided recreational tourism was going to be the economic stimulus we were going to go after? We were going to pursue all kinds of businesses to come in here. I don't know that yet. That's my point, right? Because that's what you want this to not only, again, I was going to talk about it during my piece. We're going to run out of time when Allison gets here. What do we need to do to prepare this to be attractive for companies associated with Micron and clean tech? That's what that whole economic development conference was about. And this is a part of that equation. But it's not just a rail trail. Some of these places make industrial parks on the railroad, and they do office complexes. And the center of the railroad is like a cool little hub where people go and hang out, and they maintain that piece of the railroad. And another piece is a pump car thing, because that's a really scenic spot. There's just different ways to do it, and I want to figure it out. To the best of my ability.
I think we can all agree the only thing that can be done, cannot be done, is nothing,
Right.
right? In the end, it can't just sit there and rot away.
No change, you can expect the same.
Exactly.
And again, abandonment is the last, none of us want abandonment.
That's a bad word.
That carries a legal connotation.
Yeah.
And once the rail right-of-way is abandoned, in New York State, it can be broken up to individual landowners.
They don't want that either.
We
The railroad
don't.
doesn't want
Nobody
that.
wants that. So we want to do everything we can to prevent that from happening.
Nathan stated that.
It
would revert back.
Right, the railroad doesn't want that.
Some of the railroad split parcels.
Yeah.
I've seen railroad properties where the original taking had reversionary clauses in them, that the railroad stopped. And some were stopped operating, some were abandoned and so on. They would revert back to that property owner.
You could go back to 1884 property laws in some instances, is what he said.
Well, that's the way it was, that's the way the.
I agree with you.
It was definitely a concern.
It was a concern for him.
Yes.
So we're all on the same page, Dr. Holmes. We're all on the same page. We're just figuring out how to get there. That's all. How to walk down that trail. Thank you, guys.
Gentlemen, thank you very much. Appreciate your time. Appreciate you sitting here through all that. I'm so sorry.
Just so you were wondering, I do have an identical hat.
Oh, yeah.
It was a pleasure meeting.
Absolutely, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Al.
Good to see you. Nice to see you. Good to see you. Sure.
Good to see you, Brian. Yes, yes.
Nice to see you, Dr. Holmes.
Appreciate it. Thank you for coming. Appreciate it.
So it's always a little strange knowing Dr. Holmes and Dr. Harvard, because they've both been my personal physicians at different guys, like over the years. So it's always, I mean,
Great with the picture.
exactly. I think they're probably thinking I should have let that guy die.
Yeah.
Like, that's what they're really
So the
thinking.
commercial ones are
Thinking, I should have let that infection out. His wife is even nicer. Man, he's a passionate son of a gun.
Yeah, you do those.
So this relates to, and Allison's going to show you something, guys, and I'm going to skip my economic update because it relates to this stuff. All the things that I was at recently in this conference and was about how do you prepare yourself for Micron and what might be available for them to come here and develop. And I've asked Jenna to do some work, and she's now working with Allison in the county to try to create what I would call a repository of available properties. We're getting contacts. You guys know we've agreed to, Brian accepted a proposal from Bennington Agency. There's 8 IDAs across the southern tier that have entered into a partnership. We get consistent requests from them for properties that are available that have certain types of things on them, sewer, water, internet, things like that, right? What are shovel ready? Does the county own them? Are they privately held? And we're in the infancy of trying to create that. Other things like the recreational plan and things like that, that's all. Position yourself in the center of this economic development between Onondaga County and Broome County, and Chenango County should catch some draft. What do we need to do that? I'm not going to bore us to death. Allison, I'll talk about it next time. But Allison's going to talk about that land that she and Jenna are creating.
Yeah, so there's two different Excel sheets that you've got there. So the first one that's up on the screen is properties that I was able to find that are for sale in Chenango County that are over 100 acres. So that's the basis that I went by, and then I just added more data that might be pertinent to anybody that's interested in the property. So that includes the 3-phase, if they have access to that, or if it's within 500 feet from that parcel. their property class, a brief description, the URL, and then I believe that there's one more cell on the end that's just like other information. So that's where I started. Obviously, each parcel is going to be different in regards to what's available, either on the property or
This is good work, Allison. This was a hot topic of conversation last week for sure.
Yeah. So obviously, I can break it down to smaller acreage. A lot of the parcels that are for sale are farm properties that are either forested, so used for timber. But I can obviously, between 50 and 99 acres, I can do 25 to 49 acres, really anything. Basically, the way that I did it is I just looked at commercial realtors across the county and got the parameters to include the things that I wanted to include. And then the similar thing for the next sheet is commercial properties with a pre-existing building on them. So that's going to be warehouse facilities. One of them's like a gym. One's a multi-use vacant property. With the same information, just including the fourth column is the price per square foot, just so you have that on, so you don't have to do that. But again, I can add pretty much anything on here. I included municipal electric, municipal water, basically the basics.
And so this is commercial properties that are for sale right now. Obviously it changes, it's fluid. So how often do we update it? Once a quarter? My point is, once she's created the database and she knows how to populate it, really we don't update it until we get new requests, right? Because then it's just, here's what we've got. Is there anything else that comes up? And she scrubs it, right? So, or we scrub it together, whatever the process would be. It's a catalog of properties that are out there for us. And it's just a step in the right direction, saying, here's what we have available. How do we attract them? How do we get these businesses to come here?
And in partnership with this, I mean, I didn't print them because it's kind of a large map, but I broke out the parcels, I mapped each one, highlighted the parcel, if there's multiple parcels next to each other that are for sale, and that includes the three-phase power, the roads, the flood zones, that kind of thing. And it's pretty simple to add more data onto there, so really, if there's any suggestions on additional information that you would like added, feel free to let me know, and I can add
Does
it.
that show utilities on it?
So it can, and it's kind of confusing the way that it is. I know that there's, different water districts, different sewer districts I can add on there. But utilities as far as power lines, is that what you mean?
So one of the things we ran into when we were looking to offload the Earl B. Clark was the fact that natural gas didn't go that far out. We had number of inquiries for kiln drying, essentially, like a Valley's type outfit, smaller. And the holdup constantly was obviously fuel source to keep the fire lit, processing plants, things of that nature. So I'm looking for things like natural gas. When water and sewer.
That would be a good
I think is a big one.
Absolutely.
I'm not sure about electrical lines, right? Because you can, couple of poles, we're not in the 1920s anymore. But infrastructure like water and sewer and natural gas lines,
I think that's a good add.
those are not.
Municipal electric would be is a fact.
I think municipal electric's key.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
'Cause
complete
commercial
cost
rates-
savings.
Commercial rates are
Yeah.
pretty cheap than typically.
And so if we get good at this, guys, we'll market these properties. I'll advertise them. I'll put them on our websites. I'll put them on Facebook, right? If you get good at this, that's what you do.
I was just gonna add, Sal, too, if I can. I know two things. I ran this on Seago, and one thing they wanna see too is a flat piece of land. So I would recommend that, like using elevation models, like 15% low slope and under they're looking for, and access to county highways, because they're gonna be bringing a 53-foot trailer up in there usually, so.
All good information.
500 foot within a county road is usually at least a county highway is something they're looking for.
So I kind of already made that, so in talks with Sal would be Acadia project. Basically what I did is I talked about the topography, if the slope faces west, if the slope faces east, that kind of thing. So that's definitely possible with these. As
So we
far
have
as,
county land that's available for this as well, right? So it's not just commercial properties or private properties that are for sale. We also have property the county owns. If somebody said, hey, I got we just had somebody cost, I need a 750,000 square foot warehouse with, 50-foot tall ceilings. I'm like, we don't have that, but we have land. If you wanted to build, you could do that someplace, right? So that's the kind of stuff we're trying to figure out.
and the natural gas is very simple to add. NICEAG actually provides that data already, so all I have to do is add it onto the map. I know we had some property owners in Preston that were looking at the Cutco line and immediately have that data, so it's not a problem to add there at all.
This is all part of.
That's great, thank you.
For you, those of you that don't know Eric Scribner, I'm city planning director here. There's something all tied to this, and Jeff and RC heard me say, and there was a big topic again, and was it Matt Caldwell, was that the guy's name from the city? Did anybody see Bainbridge just recently got a community development block grant, $500,000 to rehabilitate existing housing based upon need. So if you need, Phil, way to go. So $500,000, community block. So we keep talking about, we need more housing. We don't need more housing, we need housing to be rehabilitated. And that's another area of focus if we want to try to attract these guys. All this stuff is part and parcel too. So I'd like to know, where are the other properties? The IDA, Brian, I'm not going to do it again now, but at some point, IDAs across the state are buying delinquent properties. And they're making the investments to fix them up because they're getting grants and aid and different things to do it, right? And they're saying, okay, we're going to help repopulate. We're going to give houses to those businesses if you want to center around recreational tourism, blah, blah, blah. We're going to figure that stuff out. And I don't have the answer, but we're going to put a bunch of smart people in the room to figure this because it's all related. And Eric and Shane and Allison and Jenna, and if we can all sit together and say, okay, we need to talk to somebody from Molinaro's office, somebody from the state to say, how do we do this? And thankfully, he's got some people from the state, Omar Sanders in particular, who've said, hey, Shenango County is doing well. We're making some investments there. Where they invest, they'd like to continue to invest. And so I wanted to, housing should be the next place. And this is all part of that. So hopefully we can figure it out. That was my executive update. Thanks, Allison.
Yes, thank you.
Please, it's good work. We appreciate it. We'll review it again next meeting with the updates.
I'll send you the updates.
All right, do we have, we can't anyways. We can't go into executive session, we don't have enough quorum to vote in.
You can't even close the meeting, but you can. There's rules to say you can.
Yeah.
You can adjourn the
You have to stay here all day, guys. Sorry. No big deal.
Need a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Sorry we ran so late. Appreciate it. Lots of stuff.
Appreciate everybody's time.
I knew it was gonna be a long one, right? Because I knew that conversation would take a minute on the railroad, and I know, I tried to preempt it as much as I could.
1%.
Oh, that's.
What's that?
Yeah, 1%.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, percentage.
Yeah, oh, God, no, no kidding. Yeah, we were gonna have to, potentially have to arrive.